Support for the show comes from Carolina Forward, a nonpartisan organization dedicated to building a more equitable, democratic, and prosperous North Carolina.
You can learn more about their vision and values at carolinaforward.org.
North Carolina State Highway Patrol.
What cigarette do you smoke, Doctor?
A contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today.
Rock and roll has got to go.
And welcome back to the Hometown Holler. I'm Daniel Ayers.
And I'm Quinn Ray. Well, hey, man.
You know what fries my grits?
What's that?
I spent the past weekend getting cyberbullied over my painted nails.
Why is that?
So it kind of blew my mind, and I was not at all prepared for this. I recorded a reel a little while ago for us, and even before that, you remember I got my nails painted. My girlfriend got a job, and to celebrate, we went to a spa and got couples mani-pedis.
Yeah, I remember that.
Which, by the way, y'all, go out and do it if you haven't. You don't even need an excuse. Don't wait. Like, run, don't walk. They give you a glass of wine. They pamper you. It's amazing. And so I cut a reel for us, and I guess my beautiful nails were visible, and the hate, and some of them were trolls,
Sure,
but man, just like the vitriol and all of it was just like misogyny and homophobia, and people just like left and right saying like, calling me a soy boy and you're not a real man and
can't take a man seriously.
Yeah, somebody said, well, how it started was somebody said, I can't take a man seriously who wears nail polish, and I replied by asking why, knowing full well why, but why?
Sure.
And then everybody else jumps in to say, well, because it makes you a feminine bitch, right? So anyway, I haven't let it get to me, but what it's made me realize is like social media is just the worst.
Yeah, it brings out the worst.
Brings out the worst. Because I go to some of these profiles of some of these people saying these things, and it's a photo of them with their grandkid. Or it's a photo with them, a family photo of them on vacation, and they're like playing fetch with their dog. And it's like you would never go up to somebody at Food Lion and say
well,
that.
not in Food Lion, but maybe they would just call their grandson a bitch. I don't know. I hope not.
Anyway,
I won't.
But I'm gonna be in a better mood by the end of this episode because we're talking to Ken Smith.
Oh, I love some Ken Smith. He is. We're continuing our Pride month with talking everything LGBTQ, and today we have Mr. Ken Smith. And Ken has been rocking the real estate world as a licensed agent for over a decade, but that's just scratching the surface. With a killer background in marketing communication, Ken has navigated the upper echelons of nonprofits, wielding strategic genius in agency settings, and offered sage counsel to clients. But armed with an undergraduate degree in public relations and a graduate degree in marketing communication, Ken is the real deal. He's currently the president of Alamance Pride, lighting up the town with inclusivity and celebration. Plus, he's on Burlington City's police advisory team, making sure that voices are being heard. And did I mention he's also a graduate of the Leadership Alamance and the Burlington Citizens Fire Academy?
Dude, this guy's a one-man police department and fire department, and he can sell you a house.
Talk about community involvement here. So buckle up, because we're diving into Ken's journey, his passion, and his incredible work with Alamance Pride, and how he's making a real impact right here in our own neighborhood. You don't want to miss this coming up episode. It's going to be an awesome one. So without further ado, Ken, welcome to the Holler.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be here, and happy Pride to you guys and everybody who's listening out there.
Absolutely. So I want to jump off with just a quick little story. About a year ago, I came to you and I sat in your living room, and I mean, you're laughing because you probably know where this is going. And I was like, it was in the middle of Moldgate, and I was thinking I was trying to figure like, how do I get more involved? How can I be a part of the solution? And I came to you and David. And you hosted me in your living room for kind of a brainstorming session, or just to hear me out, be a sounding board. And you gave me some really good advice. And one of the pieces of advice you gave me was that it's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't go thinking you're gonna wave a magic wand and solve every problem overnight. And two, there are more ways to help the community than just running for office or getting involved in politics. And that conversation involved kind of talking about a podcast and what would that podcast look like. And I read a list of lots of really bad podcast names. And at the end, you even were like, I think you need to go back to the drawing board. And I did. And so here we are almost a year later on the Hometown Holler. So you've gotten to see kind of the full arc of this. And it's great to finally have you here. I want to start off by hearing a little bit about how you decided to get involved with organizing and leading Alamance Pride. Let's start with kind of the origin story.
Okay, well, the origin really starts when I met David, who's now my husband. We decided that it was best that I move here for a period of time because our son was in school and I was living in Greensboro. So we decided that I would move here, and I was skeptical. This is the smallest place I've lived, probably the least diversity that I've ever seen. David's been a lifetime resident of Alamance County, but I decided to get involved and try to help create a community that I would want to live in. I figured I can sit here and be unhappy, or, I can get off my ass and meet people and do some things. So we had this meeting of probably, 30 or 40 folks in the old co-op downtown when that was still there. And, some people had some interest in.
So this is 2014, 2015?
Yeah, we're getting up to 10 years now. And and it was pretty amazing. People were motivated, and we met, I think it was like May or June. And basically in a 60 to 90 day period, we put together Pride and had it in October. Yeah. So people were motivated. And I think that's when we all realized that there was a need and a desire in the community for that kind of visibility, for that kind of event, and that the support existed. And we heard all sorts of horrible things. You're going to have your tires slashed, somebody's going to get killed or break the windows in your house or something. And there was some grumbling, but at the end of the day, nothing happened. It was all talk and fortunately no action. And the community really embraced us from that point.
Yeah, it was really cool. We just had Stormy Day on the show, and she's been the MC of the Alamance Pride for years.
Actually, technically, Stormy is the first lady of Alamance Pride.
Okay, first lady.
She is the first lady of Alamance Pride.
And she was talking about when it first started that the city of Burlington had to approve of her outfits, and now it has gone to where they don't care anymore. And I just think that shows significant growth of how they've embraced.
Now, it's interesting. I have never heard that story, so I was not aware of that.
That's Stormy.
And there again, I did not work with Stormy in the initial event. So there are obviously things that I wasn't privy to. So that surprises me. But I do know that people in the city were a little hesitant.
That's a good word for it.
And we're not in favor of Pride. And, back then we had the Times News. So, people were still writing. No, the Times News is still there. But, we had a printed version. This was kind of before the internet, really did a number on newspapers. And, they came out and endorsed Pride and said that the time had come. So I think that was really important to opening people's minds and somebody very publicly taking a stand. And we were lacking folks with the will to take a stand. And the Times News did in an editorial, and they took a lot of heat. And after they...
Did Madison write that?
Madison wrote it. Madison and I, Madison was a great guy, and but he and I had some pretty good conflict, argument, conversation over that at the time. And he told me in no uncertain terms, well, we've never done that, or we don't do that. And I'm like, well, now's the time. Are you going to take a stand? Do you mean what you say or not?
Oh, that's bold.
And we were grateful for that. And I learned later on, as they were tracking their web numbers, their clicks and whatever, that at that point the editorial and coverage had generated the highest numbers of anything
That's awesome.
that they had ever had, in an online presence, and probably more letters, old-fashioned letters to the editor than about anything else, at least in recent history.
So how do you navigate living, because you did keep one foot in Greensboro, knowing that things might be a little weird. How do you navigate living and running an organization where you're openly gay, you're married to your husband, your faces are everywhere, you are both real estate agents, own your own company. How do you do this?
Some days there are some trepidation, or at least there were early on. But we really go about our business and we treat people fairly and respectfully, and we're open, honest, authentic people. We have a large social circle of folks that we know, and we just go about our business. To be honest, on a lot of days, I don't think about it. On most days, I feel okay. And I realize, granted, that I have privilege that other people don't have.
Sure.
But that has been my experience so far. That's not to say that it doesn't start to get tense, as we gear up closer to Pride and, that we don't have issues to deal with. But I think it is possible for LGBTQ folks to go about their everyday lives in this county. And, it may not always be the most welcoming place. I mean, it's not going to be San Francisco or New York or D.C. or Atlanta or any of those places, right? I mean, not right now. It could be. But I think you can go about your life here and be as okay here as much as you would any other place, really. I mean, that's not to say that something wouldn't happen to me when I leave this studio and, walk into my car,
Sure.
right? But I do think it's possible, and what has made me feel confident has been the number of people that I've worked with, the people that I've met through business, through social connections, and through volunteering and leading and building community. And you feel more comfortable when you realize your people are here or your tribe's here.
Yeah,
and that enables it, when you don't feel alone. I've had a couple of surprises with Pride, actually.
Just a couple?
No, the two that really leap out in my mind to know that it's made a difference in the community is I've had people come up to me and other board members and talk about other things that are happening in the community. And they said, you know what, we're doing this or this is happening, and we would have never been able to do this or we wouldn't have thought about doing this, but Pride came, so we broke the ground here. And I'm going to toot our horn on that.
Do it.
Because we
Pull it.
Because we did. Pride did. Those folks who started had a lot of guts to do that, and I think had no idea the longer term implications of that. But I regularly hear folks say, we can do that. We were surprised, but Pride showed us that it's possible here. And that just blew me away. And the second thing that happened the first year was the huge number of younger folks who came out. And we figured it would all be 20-somethings, maybe 30-somethings older. We just weren't sure of who would come out, right? So we had just put everything out on social media, and we didn't know what we were going to get.
No boy.
And the high school age students and the younger folks who are even more open were there, and it bowled us over. And what we hadn't considered, to us, Pride seemed to be a solution to an immediate kind of problem, maybe. There was an immediacy to it. And then the light bulb went off at that event, and then the next year, too, when we realized what a difference that we were making for these younger folks. Okay, so I'm a middle-aged guy. I'm going to be fine, right? Somebody who's 40 or 30, they're probably going to be fine, or older. But what we realized is that we started making things okay or more okay for younger folks, and that the impact was going to be further reaching than we thought.
Right.
And I think for a Pride, that's probably two of the most gratifying and the biggest things that have happened is the long-term reach, and for people to say, you know what, we didn't think it could be done, and then y'all went out on a limb and did that, so hey, look at what we can do now.
Yeah, so it's not just about when the naysayers are like, you don't have to, throw it in our face and jam it down our throats, and that whole rhetoric. Like, this isn't just to have a party.
I can just say the double entendre there.
I was going to say, Quinn, you picked those words. That was.
I mean, I'm just
Don't judge me, guys. I mean,
continue, please.
Yeah, exactly. But say it again slower.
You're just jamming it down our throats, but it's it's not about that. It's not just a party. You're not just having an event to party per se. It now has evolved into more than to helping the community, to helping young people, to making people not feel alone, not just to have debauchery and a chance for people to just be very flamboyant. This is more than, it's deeper than that. It's not just the surface level.
There is a lot of depth about, pride, and it is not just a surface level, cursory kind of thing. I think it has a much more impactful meaning to folks. And the people who talk about, it being in your face or, down our throats or whatever.
We say, look.
I'm not going to say that, but
But this is what you get when you host a podcast with Quinn Ray.
You do that very well.
Thank you.
But they have the option not to attend or not to follow the social media post, and I think it's just so interesting. These folks who complain the most, who are so obsessed, and you just wonder what's going on in their minds about it all. And we see the story about the closeted folks, or the most deep in the closet, or the biggest haters, or have something to hide. Right.
If you were able to have coffee with these folks, these leaders of our community who set the tone, who represent us, what would you say? What would you hope to get across to them?
I think one, I'd want to have a cordial discussion.
Sure.
And some things that I'd want them to know is, one, there are a lot more of us out there than they think, first of all. And I mean, when we can have pride, and it's one of, the largest events, Burlington, maybe the county, annual events, certainly something downtown. It's one of the larger ones, that should tell them something about what's really going on in their community. And, one, that there are more of us than they think out there. And two, we're not going away. We're not going back in the closet, so don't even try it. And, I have no sympathy, empathy, or anything else for people who don't want it to be in their face or shoved down their throats or whatever, because, the LGBTQ community has been beaten up, stomped on, shoved in the closet all of these years. So, I mean, until they've walked in our shoes and endured what our people have had to endure in our lifetimes, I mean, I don't think they really have a right to complain about too much. The world's been their oyster, since, the beginning of time almost.
Yeah,
so,
they ain't giving you no pearls.
Right. So I got nothing for them when it comes to that stuff. But, and I think that's what anybody would say. And I'm not going to say, oh, you're being unfair. I wouldn't be all whiny and stuff.
Sure.
But, I think that they need to know the reality. Is that we're here, we're queer, we're not going anywhere. That shit works in Alamance County too, right? And but I think the other thing, that's very confrontational, right? But I think if these folks are as conservative and business oriented as they claim to be, as capitalist and all of these things,
fiscally conservative,
the pro business. Kind of conservative. If they really are that, and they truly believe that, and they think that the private sector really leads the way, then my question to them is, why are they so far, at the government level, at the service level, so far behind the private sector, which they claim to revere, right? When you look at all the local businesses that are, local homegrown businesses, like I think LabCorp has like an LGBTQ alliance or something. You can look at websites for other local grown businesses. I think Glen Raven, they've had like a non-discrimination statement on their website.
Wow.
There are places here. I mean, you think of a place relocating here like a Sheetz. That have diversity in hiring, because, the folks from Sheetz come to Pride every year and they're recruiting, right? They have a vendor space. So, my question would be, if all of these businesses are doing it and it's good for their bottom line and it's good for their businesses, and thus whatever, the old saying used to be, whatever's good for GM is good for the country. Well, if you really believe that, if what's good for the private sector business is good for the community, why are you so far behind and not doing what they're doing? Because they're leading the way.
And what would you like them to be doing? I think non-discrimination ordinances are important.
That's a tangible ask.
It's a tangible ask, but I also think that and this may not be a popular thing, but we have to also realize that we have to realize that we can't legislate people to like us or to like somebody either.
That's right.
So I think that's great, but I think that there's some, practical limitations there because you can't make somebody like a community they may not like, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
But we know it works.
Right. So I'm saying that's one thing, but I think other important things too, like, do local governments, do they cover the cost of medical procedures and treatments for the trans community? And you know what? That's not something that an elected official has to vote on, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's probably a policy change or something that your city or county manager could do. I don't know that that's a voting thing that somebody has to take a stand on. That's almost like an administrative decision, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's county or municipal. I think it's more of a state thing.
Well, I don't know, but I think there are, I think it's a question. Mm-hmm. Or, in your policing agencies, the city of Burlington has looked at how to, the police department there has had this policy for years. Those policies can be implemented by a police chief. Absolutely. Or what kind of non-discrimination. So if you don't have a non-discrimination ordinance and you're not voting on that, but what are you doing in your own hiring in HR?
Or memberships that you join.
Correct. There are a lot of things there, HRC in Washington, they're the national group. Mm-hmm. And, every year they grade municipalities. They give a scorecard, do you get an A, B, C, or D for the LGBTQ community? That's publicly available. I think Charlotte, Raleigh,
this is his real estate hat coming up.
Right. Well, I mean, but I think other communities, are like part of that report card, right? So, HRC isn't going to they can't look at every community, every municipality, but there's nothing to stop any municipality
from asking them to rate us.
No, not even that, but just picking up the report card and saying, here's what an A+ community looks like. What can we do?
That's a great idea,
to improve, to be welcoming for employees, for residents, for anybody. Those are some very practical things that can be done.
So what it comes down to, I'm hearing, is we're here. We're not going anywhere.
No.
You have an obligation to represent all your constituents. Failing to do so is just, frankly, a dereliction of duty.
Correct.
And so you're willing to work with them. You're willing to meet them in the middle. And there's not this expectation that we have to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But there is this expectation that being a servant of the people means being a servant of the people.
Of all the people.
All the people.
All
Y'all
the people.
means all.
Y'all means all.
We're coming up on time, but I want to wrap up with a question that came to me. I knew we had this on the books, this conversation, and I was talking with somebody about our pride themes. This is a parent whom I know. Mm-hmm. And I asked the parent, they've got young kids, and I said, what would you do if, I don't know, 14 years from now, your son comes out and says I'm gay, and this is my boyfriend, and we care a lot about each other. And it's a question I'm always interested to hear parents' thoughts on. And this parent said, I would love my son, but I would disagree with his choices. Now, this response, I don't agree with it. It bothered me. And I responded to it in my own way, but I wanted to ask Ken, I wonder how you would have responded to that if you had been in my shoes in that conversation.
It's a big question, Daniel.
It's a huge question, and we don't even have to answer it if we don't want to.
And I think that goes back to accepting, the whole person and their choices. If you love your child, you may not love their choices. Mm-hmm. I mean, so let's be real. In that kind of scenario, if, your son brings a boyfriend home, you're also in a situation where, a parent may not like a a girl that your son brought home. I mean, I think you've got to look at some parity there and where that is. But I do think that you would, I would want to call that out and say, well, what choice is it? Is it something you wouldn't like about that partner, or is this a homophobia? Is this, you would call out that discomfort.
I pressed her on that.
I think that would be the thing. And I think it would have to be who I knew.
Yeah.
If I was standing in line somewhere and, making small talk or something came up, which I hate to do, if it's some random stranger, I think it would be one thing. But if it was somebody I thought I knew and had a good relationship
that's
with,
who I'm,
I would, I would press that.
Well, I did. And the reason I even asked is because I know I have students listening to this conversation. A lot of it, I'm really lucky that a lot of my former students listen in, and these are folks who are in high school, and some of them may not be out of the closet yet. And some of them may be in this position, and I'm always a little bit surprised by when I'll have a 10th grader or 11th grader say, I caught the latest episode of the Holler. I'm like, you're listening to this?
Awesome.
It is super cool. And I want them to hear these questions being answered by people they can look up to and people who actually have something wise and insightful to say. And when I had this conversation and I pressed this parent, it did come down to I'm just not comfortable with my son dating a boy. And my position was actually, what you said was, I'm not comfortable with my son choosing to date a boy. And my position was, your son's not making a choice. Your son is being your son. Your son is being a human being.
Absolutely.
And okay, so it sounds like that you would take a similar route. I didn't. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing when parents really have their own insecurities and are more concerned about what their friends might think or their social status.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, I think that may be where some of that comes from. Is it their church family or their neighborhood or the people they know, maybe from a generation? I think, frankly, it's pretty damn selfish because they're less worried about their child and their happiness. And, when you have children, we're empty nesters now. And, when they go off and they do their own thing, that you've done your job well and that it's their life.
Did you ever have to deal with bullying of your son, of people being like, you got two dads?
We did not. And I'll come back to that if that's okay.
Yeah.
But I think there is, parents can be selfish. I know my own mother, when I was out and, she, found out about David, she, wanted to be okay with that, but it was very much, well, do you have to tell anybody? And it's like, look.
What do you think?
She asked that?
She did. And, yeah, she did.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was the I came from one of those families too. But to go back to your question, it was really interesting. David and I were worried about that, because I came into our son's life. He was, in his early teens. It was that kind of middle school horrible age.
Everybody loves middle school.
That horrible time in everybody's life, and we were worried about that actually. And, we just played that cool and we didn't open the door. If Lucas's friends came over, then that was fine. And the really neat thing is we kind of became the cool house to visit.
Well, your house is really
I was going to say your house
cool.
is the cool house to visit.
Well, I mean, it wasn't this house. This was another house. So,
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't this one. But, it kind of became the place to be for, all of his friends. And we knew the parents and everything.
Would you go to award ceremonies together?
We went to graduation. I don't remember any award ceremonies, but...
Y'all didn't hide the fact Lucas had two dads.
No.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we were pretty nonchalant about it. And, we had some conversations, years later, we kind of, we said, we're not always worried about it. We were always afraid of that. And what we discovered is the only people who were worried about it were me and David, and nobody else cared. And we had, that angst.
That's a
for what
word of advice.
it seemed like a good reason at the time. And then it was like, well, damn, we went through all of that. Nobody else, we were the only people who cared. So, and it was fine. And we know those kids today, I mean, they're all, in their late 20s now and getting married and having families and all that. And, we're still in touch with some of them and know them, and parents still in the neighborhood and stuff like that. And, I think that's what kind of gives you hope for the future, is when you see your kids and their friends. And, and it was interesting. I think we were kind of the cool house where they could talk about whatever, they could be themselves, and they weren't going to be judged, and nobody ever did anything horrible,
right.
But I think that we excelled in just helping all of those kids feel comfortable, whoever they were.
I don't know how you feel, Quinn, but going to my friends' houses, there were so many families. I mean, again, I think it was because I was socialized around a lot of homeschoolers. They lived in very patriarchal households, right. And I would walk in the door, and I was immediately treated like a felon with a long, violent criminal record. Don't touch that. Take your hats off. Wear your shoes. Don't, I mean, which, and I get every house has rules, but right. I did not feel comfortable being myself. I did right. not feel comfortable expressing myself. I didn't feel comfortable having a conversation. I mean, it was I wanted to be neither seen nor heard. I wanted to go to my friend's bedroom, close that door, and just be safe
right.
from the judgment of others.
We always had conversations with those kids. I mean, it was really,
and they're going to remember that.
I hope. I think I think so.
Of course, I mean, when you're a teenager and an adult treats you like a human, you remember that.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, we never had any problems with anybody doing anything that they shouldn't have done. I mean, they were all great kids. Everybody was well behaved. I mean, it just couldn't have been any better.
Well, I think we're coming up on time, but we definitely want you to stick around for the back porch if you're down to do it and have a little
absolutely
talk afterwards. So before we sign off, though, where can people find you and get involved and help? Any final thoughts for the listeners?
Well, not just that. They can buy a house with this guy.
Oh, that's right.
The Carter Smith Group is like Alamance County's flagship realtors.
That's right.
We hope so. We want to keep it that way. Yeah. But you can find me and information about Pride. And I'll put in a plug, the Carter Smith Group on Facebook. But anyway, Facebook is our primary communications tool for Alamance Pride. So just hit us up on a messenger, or like a post or follow us, and
we'll put it in our newsletter.
Yeah, everything you need to know about Pride will come through our Facebook page.
One of our recent guests, Mark Sandlin, he's a reverend in Greensboro, progressive reverend, told him about Alamance Pride. He's super excited. He wants to come out and wear his like rainbow regalia and just be a representative of progressive clergy. So he was so grateful for what y'all are doing, and he wants to come out and join the fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All are welcome.
That's right.
All
That's
are
what we
welcome.
told him. Cool. Kim, well, thank you so much. And folks, thanks for listening to the Hometown Holler. Please check out our Patreon. We got bonus content. We got some merch for you, some swag that is as ethical as it is comfortable, talking about our T-shirts. Also got some live in-person events that you can sign up for if you're a Holler hero, as we call it. So just every sustainer makes this project possible, because it's a lot of work.
Boy, is it.
Not just the overhead. We talked about having the studio, but the time. You and I both have jobs, and each of these episodes is hours of editing and prep, and then we come to the studio, we have these conversations. So if you believe in what we're doing, if you believe in this project, if you believe in making our community, our state better, one conversation at a time, we invite you to support us. Every donation, it's not a donation because you're getting something back. You're
That's
getting
right.
all kinds of cool merch and content, but it all really helps. So please consider sustaining us, and we'll see you guys on the back porch.
Bye, y'all.